What's up, amigos? Commander Jaime here. Today we are going over a Thavas Lambros deck profile in Standard. I specifically want to highlight this one because this is actually one that plays third in Vision's tournament. The player Darell Joyner actually topped with this. He's also known as Kasarigi Zan from the Vision community. So he's the one that helps out hosting the events too. So shout out to you, amigo. And honestly, taking the time to actually go through an interview. So you can check it out in Force of the Ocean blog. So you can actually see that interview as well. And so really, I just wanted to cover the standard deck profile. So let's get started into it. So we have Lambros and Thavas. So for those that don't really know, there's a pseudo strike mechanic that Thavas wants to go into Lambros during your battle phase. So for example, the skill that it has at the beginning of your battle phase, if there are 3 or more rested rear guards, then you can discard a card and search your deck up to 1 grade 4 card and write it as stand and then shuffle your deck. And then at the end of it also gets the additional drive check and plus 10k as well. And so by the end of the turn, you retire that card and then rewrite a grade 3 from your soul and then end the turn at that point. And so what happens is that you'll get another Excel gift too. And then honestly, it's generic. So right now we just have Lambros. So who knows for the future? We may have another grade 4. With Lambros, so what's the point of like superior or pseudo striding, however we want to call it, is that basically when it's placed, you can choose any number of your rear guards that are rested and stand them. And so this helps compensate for you resting all these rear guards, where it's like, okay, I'm resting all these rear guards, but can I get to use them? And that's really what Lambros does. He helps them reuse those rear guards for you actually to perform a sufficient battle formation for your battle phase. And so the main skill though is that when Lambros attacks, you can Counter Blast 1, Soul Blast 1, choose a column, and then stand those units. And then if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3, they each get 5k at that point. And so really this is just like the Lambros from the G era days. It's a little weaker because it's restricted to 1 column, but we had to do what we had to do at that point. And that's where cards like Koro Soto here, where on attack, if you see 4 other rested units, it gets plus 15k. So you can restand this kind of beater. So that way you can take advantage of this being an attacker and then restand it to get another attack at that point. And then of course cards like Narissa, where she's a perfect rest target, where you can rest it by a card's ability. You can Soul Blast 1 to stand it, so it gets additional 10k. That is not once per turn, and so you can actually start beefing up Narissa as a really good booster or even attacker up to 1, 2, 3 to up to 4 times in a turn. It could be absurd, just depending on how many cards you can actually rest with her, and of course meet that requirement too. So what helps with that is that Thavas has that ability to, where once per turn, Vanguard or Rear Guard, you can actually rest one of your units and basically retire an opponent's Rear Guard of your choice, which is really good because it keeps that Thavas aesthetic from G era, but at the same time it gives you control, spot removal, key units, and with that you can call another Thavas at Rear Guard circle and you get to retire 2 cards and so on. It scales at that point. So it helps you fulfill that requirement for the second ability. And then also to worth note, Lambros has the hand skill that if you have Thavas in the name as your Vanguard, then it gets grade 1. So it becomes a grade 3, so you could call it as a rear guard if you need to from hand, so you can fulfill. But ultimately, we don't want to see Lambros in hand. We want to make sure Lambros is in the deck, and then Thavas can actually grab it at that point and really take advantage of that. So other cards that really help with resting, one big one is Agias, and of course we don't have the Pursuit Assault here in English as the promo. I know Japan does. That is a better version, but we had to work what we have, and that's Agias, and that's once per turn you can Counter Blast 1, rest 2 of your rear guards, and then this unit gets plus 10k until the end of the turn. Now, by itself, it's not a great skill. Honestly, when it came out, it was kind of, there's Thanasis and cards like that, but with this deck, it honestly helps abuse Narissa and also meet that requirement if you're short 1 card, where most of the cards rest 1 rear guard. So at that point, you need 3 cards per turn that actually rest rear guards. But Agias can rest 2, so that saves you an extra card at that point. So you can use the best of your resources at that point, and it gives power to itself, which you'll notice that the deck needs some aggression. And being a 19k beater by itself is helpful. If you put it in an XL2 circle, it becomes a 24k beater and just go from there at that point. And it could be a target that you may have to restand if you don't have the Koro Assault, so that's always okay. And then another card that helps with the consistency is Dennis. He got to retrain. He used to be the 10k vanilla from the trial deck days. Dennis the Menace, I call him. And so he has a Vanguard Rear Guard circle skill where he can rest another Rear Guard. Look at the top card of your deck, call it to Rear Guard, so you don't have a choice, you have to call it. So if you see a heal trigger, guess what? You're calling it too, right? but ultimately it helps build up board for that requirement that you need to see 3 minimum rested, and also start building a battle formation too that you can utilize. And it's a hard once per turn, so you can't chain multiple of these in one turn. I wish we could. It will make things a lot easier to generate advantage, but you could always call this guy starting at grade 2 to start +1 at that point, so you can start building a formation for you to actually work with for the grade 3 turn and beyond at that point. So it just scales. And honestly, this could be a target that you could put on the XL2 circle, making it basically a 14k beater on its own, so that we could actually poke Vanguards that are 12k or 13k at that point. With that, both Dennis and Thavas are search targets for Nikki. So Nikki, when it's placed on Vanguard circle only, you can check the top 7 for either one of them and add it to your hand. So it's a really soft +1. And one of the things that Darell had told me is that he wants to prioritize Nikki as one of the right targets, because that way it gives you that consistency and gives you the key pieces. It also is a unit that it rests itself, and then it counts to that resting condition that Thavas looks for, and it also recycles from the drop zone, so that way you can recycle your Lambroses over here and start reusing them again as well, turn by turn. So you're not really missing out, especially if we're only playing 3 copies. I personally like 3 copies as well. I think it's a good middle ground. 2 is 2 less, and 4 may be a little clunky in my opinion, especially if we don't see any value in having it in our hand. You know, it's a grade 4 and you could ride it after your grade 3 turn, so you're 15k base, but it really doesn't do much after that except for its skill, which is, it's better when you do Thavas into Lambros, so it's 25k base by its own, your triple drive as well, so you apply much more pressure, and then if you have an 8k booster behind Lambros, then it becomes a 33k column on its own, so it actually applies some really magic numbers at that point. So Nikki is very vital on recycling those Lambroses, especially when you're going against Shiranui. 3 Lambroses is great, and so if we keep recycling at least 1 or 2 of them, we're still able to do our Lambros turn until we can actually close out the game with Shiranui at that point. So with help being our right target is Wheel Assault. So I love this card, and honestly Darell took the time to really point out that, as you can see with the grade 2s, there's no restanders. So there's no Tidal Assault, there's no Algos, there's no Terrific Coil. So there isn't really a turn 2 regression or a dependency on restanders at that point. And so Wheel Assault helps fix that problem too in the grade 2 turn game. So for example, if you have an Agias and you have a Coral Assault with a Narissa and a Wheel Assault as your rearguards, and especially if you have like Dennis as your Vanguard where you can actually use Narissa to beef up, you have this battlefield formation where you can attack with Agias first, then the Vanguard, then Narissa boosted with Wheel Assault, and then you can swap the Agias with the Coral Assault, and then Coral Assault will see the 4 rested units, get the plus 15k, and guess what? You hit 4th battle suit. So at the end of the turn, Narissa, who's also in the front row because it got boosted by Wheel Assault, can now go into the assault because you have 4 rearguards in total, right? And now Coral Assault, because there was 4 battles, it also goes into assault. So those go away, draw you 2 new cards, and guess what? You just have a Vanguard that they could only attack. So it makes it a little harder for them to damage the Nayu in a sense. They have to attack the Vanguard unless they pass turn at that point, but you know, have a rearguard that's just sitting there. And ultimately, we want Aquaforce to have rearguards, and so if we can refund some of those resources that we committed to the field, great, right? And so that helps with that too, but also if it's a right target, that's why I said that, you know, first is Nikki, and then of course Wheel Assault. If you ride it, you can CB1, draw a card, and then call something for hand. So you +1, you can also call units like Lambros or if I was early on while you're at grade 2. Technically, you can write another grade 1 on top of that, but in standard, it's probably not the best decision. I know premium, it might be actually a better decision, but ultimately, you're going to write a grade 2 on top of it and actually get that skill off. And you may call any units like, you know, they were going to call anyway, like a Narissa or something in the back row, so they're not going to get attack at that point or anything like that, so that's definitely key. And another grade 1 is Penguin Soldier. So Penguin Soldier is also a unit that can rest itself, so it can count that. It also gives units in front of it in the same column +5, so that can make better numbers for your columns at that point. You could also restand it with Lambros once it gets placed, so not only that, your column is at a +5k more powerful than it would normally be at that point, so you can take advantage of that too as well. And he mentioned that one of the reasons that he wanted the Penguin is because the consistency of the restful condition, and so he has cards like Nikki, Penguin, Thavas, Dennis, Agias, pretty much maxed out to 4 except for the Penguin, of course, but there's only so much room. And as you can see with Narissa, there's only 3 copies instead of the 4. I'm still messing around myself with the 4 to 3 ratio. Honestly, it's a it's a good call either way. If you want to be a little more consistent with the resting, then 3 Penguin is fine for me, and then 3 Narissa at that point. So with that, you just have enough consistency of actually doing the pseudo stride turn, because honestly, if you cannot perform that turn, that combo, you are dead in the water. You know, you can't do much. Your grade 2s don't really do much as well. Wheel Assault can only take you so far with, you know, combining Koro Assault and Narissa units and just going ham from there. But if you cannot meet those 3 rested requirements, it's going to be a bad time. That's all I'm going to say in that. And then, of course, with the draws, we have 4 draw, which are PG draws, so we make sure we have room in the grade 1 slots. And then, of course, 8 crit with 4 heal, and then, of course, the draw on right draw 1 starter. So that's really the basis of the deck, and it's very consistent. If we have Pursuit Assault, then we can actually Soul Blast 1, draw a card, and do the resting. It makes things a lot easier. And so, you know, combo plays that you want to focus on, as soon as you ride to grade 3, doing the Lambros turn is actually very beneficial, so you can get 5 attacks that way. So you typically only need 1 to 2 CB at that point. And so if you can get away with 1, great. You can save Agias for later for making bigger and beefier columns. But if you have 3 Counter Blasts, you can really take advantage of Narissa at that point. And then, of course, yeah, you Soul Blast 1. Lambros also Soul Blast 1, but cards like Koro, Soul, and Narissa actually go back into Soul. So you have that cycle of resources being refunded as well. So that way the next turn you're actually well prepared at that point. So with that being said, that's pretty much the deck profile. Honestly, I'm excited with that. It's pretty fun. It's different. And some of the support actually works with some of the current support like Revan and so on. Who knows with Valeos coming out in the retrain set with Clan Selection Plus, I think it's called, if they're going to rely on rested units too. So we have to wait and see. And again, this is CFE Plus, the program. Machina Blau actually created this program. It looks really crisp. And also a shout out to NaruSamurai, because he's the one that actually created this beautiful overlay for my channel. So I appreciate you, brother. And you can see the social media down with the blogs. And honestly, hope this is something that you guys like seeing forward. I honestly, these are very simple to do, standard deck profiles, and if I could do it with CFE Plus, it just looks fantastic on screen. So if you like seeing this, just let me know down in the comments, give me your feedback. And again, thanks again to Darell Joyner for topping, representing Aquaforce, you know, whether it be online or real life. Thank you, brother. We need more people repping Aquaforce at this point. So you guys, talk to you later, comment down below, share, subscribe. See ya. Bye.